Hello, Trek fans, and welcome to Star Trek Prodigy, a RebingeIt podcast. My name is James.
And my name is Kim.
And my name is Brian.
And we're watching Star Trek Prodigy and talking about it here on the Talk Through Media network of podcasts. Join us. Welcome to the very first episode of this podcast, where we'll be talking about the first ever episode of Prodigy called Lost and Found Parts 1 and 2. These two episodes were released as a single episode on Paramount Plus on Thursday, October 28th, 2021.
On this podcast, we'll be doing a recap of the episode to get you caught up. Then we'll talk about the new characters and give you our impressions on everything.
We'll, of course, do ratings and reviews, and we'll read out any feedback we get as well. If you want to join the conversation, you can email us your feedback at StarTrekProdigy@talkthroughmedia.com or join the Facebook group at facebook.com/groups/Star Trek TTM podcasts. Just get your feedback in by noon Eastern Time on the Friday after the episode streams. We'll do our best to include any feedback we receive, though keep in mind this is a kid's show, so keep your feedback strictly PG.
Does that include me?
Yeah, you need to keep your feedback PG as well.
Oh, okay.
Before we get started, James and I are the usual RebingeIt team from Rebinge Deep Space Nine, but we have a special guest from Talk Through Media with us. Welcome, Brian.
Hey, how's it going? I'm happy to be here.
Excellent. We're happy to have you.
I was just going to say, this is the first Star Trek Talk Through Media podcast currently running that I won't be hosting every week.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh, we feel honored.
Yeah.
It's a new era.
It's a new era.
And this is the first show that we've podcasted about that's, within a decade of airing.
Yeah, this is going to be new territory for you as well, because these will be airing every week. So
Yeah.
you don't have the luxury of being able to record ahead or anything like that.
That's true.
You have to get them out as they come out.
Yeah, Paramount wouldn't send us early promos.
Oh, I should have asked.
They're not very good with that, are they?
But at least nobody will spoil it for me. People spoil a 30-year-old show for me all the time, just by accident. So at least here,
I bet.
nobody will spoil it.
I bet.
Oh, yeah.
Well, let's get on to the episode, and we'll start with a recap of what happened in this very energetic episode.
So we have a cool opening with a couple of bars of classic Star Trek theme music right off the top. And we open at the Tars Lamore prison colony, where there is a bunch of aliens who seem to be mining for something. I wonder if these are the spice mines of Kessel.
When you put the spice mines in there, I just assumed you were talking about Dune. That's how much I already forgot Star Wars.
We're introduced to our new hero, Dal and Rok, a purple kid with a tail on the back of his head and spots, which remind me of a trill. He's clearly plotting his escape from this nasty place. As he looks around, he briefly catches sight of a ball-shaped robot creature off in the distance before it mysteriously disappears. The kid tells us there are no translators on the planet, so prisoners can't communicate with each other. A smart move there, because it will stop cooperation and prisoners plotting to escape. We very quickly meet our first bad guy, a large mechanical dude with red eyes. So, obviously, he's the bad guy.
Yeah, the bad guys always have red eyes.
And he tells the purple kid that he's looking for Fugitive Zero, the robot we saw earlier. Dal plays it cool, of course. He's very sarcastic with the big guy, and that doesn't go very well.
And this is how you can tell it's a kid's show, because he's too cool for school and he's not, afraid of his surroundings at all. So that's how you know it's definitely for kids.
But he's also kind of adorable.
He's extremely adorable and charming. The mysterious robot Fugitive Zero sabotages the power, saving the purple kid from Dreadnought, the big bad guy. So he's able to get away and he takes off running, eventually running into a giant red rock-like monster who just growls at him. He keeps running with bug-like alien robots chasing him, and he ends up stealing a transport vehicle from an alien that looks a little bit like a troll, and he drives it right into these rock crushers in his flawed escape plan. And this big bad guy looks so much like General Grievous from Star Wars. It's really striking. And when we were watching it, James said, he's either Grievous or Grievous's cousin.
Well, he could have coughed a little bit. That would have been perfect.
That would have been funny. Well, he nearly makes it to freedom, but another villain watching on a view screen turns off the power, causing him to crash. And we're at the opening titles. All right, what did we think about that opening? There was a lot of action.
There definitely was.
Great chase scene. The whole bit when he goes into the rock crushers, I felt like that was almost a callback to Galaxy Quest.
It was a little like Galaxy Quest. It was also pretty funny when he did that because he said something like, oh, I'm sure this is not as bad as it sounds. And then once he got in there, he's like, way worse, way worse.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was fun.
They're definitely giving him a sense of humor.
Yeah. Did you get the feeling right from the beginning that this felt like Star Wars, apart from just the guy who looked like Grievous?
Oh, completely. It felt very much like a Star Wars spin-off.
Yeah. Even with the guy that is kind of hidden in the background where you don't quite see him or you just see the side of his face when he turns off the power. Yeah, even that had a Star Wars feel. There's nothing about this opening scene except for the music that reminded me of Star Trek.
Yeah, it wasn't very Star Trek-ish.
No. Brian, did you watch the Clone Wars or any of those Star Wars cartoons?
None. No. And I've heard a lot that this is very similar, but if it's not a movie, I haven't seen it, with the one exception. Yeah. I have seen season 1 of The Mandalorian, but I still haven't seen season 2.
Ah.
My comment on that would be it unquestionably gives a nod to that style and feel of the Star Wars cartoons.
To those, the animation.
Yeah.
Yeah, it definitely does. I watched a number of them, but I couldn't get all the way through. I found them really samey. And I've always been a bigger Star Trek fan than Star Wars, so maybe I was just never destined to get through them.
Yeah, I'm the same way.
Yeah, the bad guy who was turning off the power, at first I thought maybe Vader, but later I thought Emperor, so he could have been either one.
Gotcha. Well, now we learn that the Kazon are supplying the colony with criminals and orphans as workers. A very Oliver twist, kidnapping orphans and using them for labor.
Okay, so we've come from Star Wars to Oliver Twist. All right.
And apparently also cats who purr as this Kazon presents a pink cat as a new recruit.
Oh, it's cute.
Yeah, it's got cats. I'm totally in with this.
Right.
We meet a new character who comes out with a hooded cape and her face in shadow, almost like a Jedi. This is the daughter of the diviner that Dal works for. And she does not seem terribly happy with her executive position within this organization. I'm guessing here she's a trainee Sith. She's got the whole cloak and reveal thing down already.
No, she absolutely does. I mean, we laughed out loud when she came walking out with that hood up and the cape. It was like, okay, now we're just blatantly looking like Star Wars.
What is thy bidding, my master?
And the Kazon, I mean, I recognize the Kazon right away from Voyager.
They were the warrior race that Voyager had to deal with mostly. Was it the first and second seasons?
Yeah.
Yeah, they never really felt that menacing. That was their biggest problem.
It was because they were not unified.
Yeah, they're very tribal.
Yeah, exactly.
I felt threatened by their hair.
Yeah, their hair was threatening.
Like hard, and like if they really came at you with it, they could hurt you.
Well, they always looked like they just rolled out of bed.
Yes, they did.
Like Rok-Tahk's cousin.
A little bit. Well, now we meet the diviner, who's floating in some kind of chamber, and we find out that Dal Rael is of an unknown species, and they think he's working with Fugitive Zero. The diviner wants his daughter, who we later learn is named Gwyn. His daughter is the one with the cape and the hood.
Junior Sith Lord.
They want Gwyn to get this information out of Dal. She and her father are the last of an alien race called the Vaunakat. We learn that he's keeping a secret from her about what he's really searching for on this planet, and he's worried about the Federation influencing her. So this is the first familiar Star Trek reference that we get, if you exclude the Kazon, obviously.
So he's worried that if she's introduced to root beer, it could ruin everything?
Deep Space Nine reference.
Well, the cat is also something familiar because that's Cation.
Right.
And, we've seen Cations from the animated series, and there's one in Lower Decks right now. The Doctor is a Cation.
That's right.
Arguably my favorite character.
That's right.
Yeah.
They look radically different in between this character and Lower Decks. So, I didn't connect that right away.
I mean, if you think about it, cats look different. Like, we've even seen them live action. There was one in Star Trek 4, and that Admiral looks way different as well.
Yeah.
So.
Right.
So this cat we're seeing in the show is kind of like one of those cute, cuddly cats you would like.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the Doctor that we see in Lower Decks is like one of those rough alley cats that lives on rodents for a living.
Exactly.
Yes.
Anyway, so Dal is stuck in a cell where he hears a voice say that he's the only one who believes he can escape. He's later taken to Gwyn, and they appear to have a strangely friendly relationship. During the interrogation, she asks him about Fugitive Zero, and Dal says, "Do you think I'd hitch my fate to some rebel fighter?" Another Star Wars reference.
That one was even more blatant.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was obviously blatant.
Yep.
And she asks to discuss the location of his hidden rebel base. No, she doesn't.
Not exactly.
She tells him that Fugitive Zero is a Medusan, a genderless, non-corporeal creature who is also a telepath. Dal agrees to help her find the fugitive under threat of being interrogated by Dreadnought.
So the Medusans were first seen in the TOS episode, Is There in Truth No Beauty? And I have to say, it is a truly appalling episode. James and I watched it last night, and it is not a good look for Star Trek. It actually starts out kind of interesting, but it devolves very quickly into a horrible episode. And it has Pulaski on it.
Yes.
Obviously, she's not playing Pulaski, but the actress who played Pulaski. Also, I thought it was curious how well these two characters, Dal and Gwyn, seem to know each other. Like, why would they be close? I mean, they seem to have a pre-existing relationship, and he's overly familiar with her, and he puts his feet up on the table. And I don't know, I thought that was kind of interesting. I hope that they explore that a little more about why these two know each other so well.
I wonder if it's because they're the only two of a similar age, perhaps.
Maybe.
And she's as much trapped there as he is.
Well, they make some kind of a reference to her being overly protective of the unwanted, as the aliens on this planet are called.
I assume that was just the orphan.
So maybe she's protective of the younger ones. He could have been one of the orphans, right? He was quite young.
Yeah, that's what I took from it.
Okay.
The one part to me is confusing. I mean, they call it a prison, but it's not a prison. It's
a Victorian workhouse.
Yeah, it's basically kidnapped and put into servitude.
I might be jumping into overanalysis here, but it could be that the Kazon are actually recruiting other races to give their criminals to the Kazon for payment, who then transport them to the prison facility. So it becomes a profitable enterprise for the Kazon as the middlemen in this organization.
I mean, it could be, but what's a cute, cuddly little cat done wrong?
Yeah, no, now he's just stealing orphans, yeah.
Yeah.
I would see the Kazon lacking a lot of moral fiber.
No, for sure.
I have seen online a theory that it could be species that were taken by the caretaker from Voyager.
Oh.
There's no evidence to support this, but there's no evidence to...
Yeah, and the caretaker was a complete jerk, so he could have pulled anybody from anywhere.
Sure. You know, why they all seem to be alpha quadrant or beta quadrant species. Who knows? But
yeah.
It's possible.
Like the Lurians, yeah.
Right.
Oh,
yeah.
Maybe the Prophets opened a second wormhole.
That's the other thing, too. I mean, they're supposedly in the Delta Quadrant, but they can't be very far away from Federation territory because the Diviner seems to know very well about what the Federation is.
Right.
Well, even in Voyager, they were only 70 years away from Federation space.
Only 70 years away. That's all.
It depends on your extended lifespan. For a tortoise, that's a pretty quick trip.
True.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to find out if the Diviner knows about the Federation because of dealings in the actual Alpha Quadrant, or if he found out some other way. I mean, that's a mystery, I'm sure, that will reveal itself.
Yeah.
And in a truly ridiculous piece of trivia, tortoises were the actual first interplanetary travelers. They were the first creatures to orbit the moon.
Really? Never would have known that.
And did you need to know that? That's always the question with the facts in James's head.
I don't think so.
All right. Well, now Dal is sent into a deep mining cave where he ends up tethered to the big red rock monster from earlier. There's a really cute part here that includes a safety video as they're descending into the ground, like an airplane safety video.
Oh, that was great.
That was really funny. Dal ends up causing a cave-in that breaks their tether and reveals a bunch of valuable crystals, and he's kind of stuffing his pockets with them. But much more importantly, it's also revealed a giant hidden ship that looks a little bit like Voyager.
Were you cheering at this point?
No, not yet. But at least it was turning into Star Trek a little bit more.
Yeah.
They approach the ship that's kind of embedded in the rocks a bit, and as the door starts to open, we see a Starfleet logo on the inside of the door. That was cool.
Yeah.
That gave me a little bit of goosebumps. They make their way to the bridge where the rock monster sees an icon shaped like a comm badge kind of hovering in the air and presses it, activating the ship. And suddenly, the rock monster and the purple kid can understand each other because the universal translators come online. And the giant rock monster now has a tiny little squeaky high-pitched voice that it just does not go with the appearance.
Yeah.
But suddenly the two can communicate. And we learn that the rock monster's name is actually Rok-Tahk. That was also, I thought, such an important step once the translators came online. Because, if they were so unable to form any kind of bonds, while they're in this prison, I mean, that would just be torture. They couldn't say anything to each other. You couldn't even just say hi. So I thought that was a really important moment when they could understand each other.
Keep them divided.
Yeah, definitely.
I think that was very much the point. So we now get to meet Fugitive Zero close up. Zero is an energy-based life form inside of a self-made containment suit, because if any corporeal creatures laid eyes on him, they would go mad. Except for Vulcans, just going to point that out.
Well, Vulcans he had to wear a visor.
Yes, with a red filter on it.
That episode was terrible.
Zero has been following Dal because he's the only one left there who has hope. The Medusan was kidnapped and used as a weapon against the other aliens, but they managed to escape. They can tell the Diviner has a dark purpose, and it seems he was searching for this ship. We determined that we need some help to fly this ship, including an engineer. Somebody has to fix it. Dal recruits the guy who was working on the loader earlier, which he stole, and this guy is Jankom Pog, a Tellarite who is quite the contrarian, so they purposely argue with him into getting him to agree to help. He says he needs a week to fix the ship, so clearly this guy is a Starfleet-level engineer.
Yeah, he's ready to be an engineer.
Yeah.
This voice in Jason Mantzoukas, I mean, you recognize immediately, right? He's been on so many different shows. And I almost found it distracting how recognizable his voice was compared to all the other characters.
And did you notice that alien, the same species as Morn, was the one they showed being brainwashed by Zero?
Yeah, I noticed that right away.
Yeah.
Morn is my weekly target to spot in each Deep Space Nine episode.
Yeah. In the original series, the Medusan would drive people crazy because it was so ugly. And they make this point in the episode about it being ugly. I was relieved that was not the message they were giving here. At least this way, it was just like, oh, if you look directly at this energy ball, it will drive you crazy.
Yeah. Although, which I don't quite understand.
No, it's not logical.
No.
It's the telepathic radiation that does it.
Okay. That's a good excuse as any.
Nobody beats James at headcanon. Jankom was a lot less pig-like than the images of the other, was it Tellarites?
Yeah, I found that as well.
Yeah.
It was one of those things where it's like I had to be told that he's a Tellarite. And it's like, oh, okay. I guess I could see that.
There's two things I think could be possible here. One is that they revised the design of that alien, the look of it, so that they would make it into a more appealing, friendly character than the original sort of designs. The other option is they played a lot of World of Warcraft and wanted to get a troll-like character in there.
Did that alien appear on more than Enterprise?
Yeah, we briefly seen them. They were in the original series, and they may have been in the animated series.
Yeah.
They've been in Discovery. They've been in the short tracks, and we have seen them in Picard, now I think about it.
Yeah.
I didn't remember them in Picard. Okay.
Yeah, if I'm not mistaken, that interview Picard has in the first episode, there are a few species there, and one is a Tellarite.
Oh, nice. On the ship, Rok brings in Murf, who appears to be an animated pile of blue jello, and may not be an intelligent species. The translator doesn't understand anything he says, or it says, and I like how she says, it's probably too smart for the translator. So I think we're introducing that the character of Rok is the person with the big heart, who likes the animals.
Yep. Yeah. Has a lot of pets.
Yeah. Gwyn, Dreadnought, and a whole troop of bug-like robots find Dal, who's left the ship, and send him to work on the surface. Apparently, nobody comes back from the surface, because on the ship, Fugitive Zero says, perhaps they should prepare to leave without Dal.
They gave up fast.
Yeah.
So Dal is working on the surface when there are dangerous geysers of, I don't know, maybe steam shooting through the surface, and Dal escapes in the confusion. But it turns out it's all a trap, and Dal is about to lead them right to Fugitive Zero on the Starfleet ship. Dal makes it back to the ship, and they send him outside to fix the shields, and that's when Gwyn, the junior Sith Lord, approaches. He tries to get her to join him and escape this planet, but it's too late. Dreadnought is right behind her with the army of those bug robots. when Dreadnought sees the ship, he tells Gwyn that her father has been searching for that, and Gwyn had no idea. That's a big clue of something.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, definitely. Also, that points at the relationship between Gwyn and Dal, that he's actually asking her to join him, come with him. The two of them can get out of there together.
Yeah, because they make lots of hints about the two of them talking about going off into the stars, right, together.
Well, some of that might be she's one of the few people who can speak multiple languages and can actually talk to him. So there could be that aspect of he's just the only person she can talk to, and he likes to talk.
Okay, that's a good point. I hadn't thought of that.
Boy, does he like to talk.
And I can relate to that.
Yeah, he's a chatterbox.
That's why I like him.
He's a little like you, James. I can see that.
Well, we go into a big fight, in which includes Gwyn getting onto the bridge of the ship and fighting with Rok-Tahk. We see that she's able to transfer the patterns on her arm into a weapon, like an edged blade, but it's not super effective against Rok-Tahk. Well, she's a giant rock thing.
Yeah, a little butter knife isn't going to hurt the rock.
Exactly.
It was cool, though.
It was very cool.
Yeah, it was a great effect.
Yeah.
And she says, some words that activate it.
It's kind of like what we see in season 3 of Discovery. It had programmable matter.
Ah, yeah. And I assume as a junior Sith Lord, they don't let them have lightsabers yet.
One step too far.
Well, the bug robot starts shooting at the ship and cause a rock slide, and it heads off in towards a crevasse. Fugitive Zero manages to get the engines online, and the music picks up. The diviner is telling Dreadnought not to harm his prize, which is the ship. Dal is still stuck on the outside and trying to fix the shields as they begin their escape. The music in this scene is awesome.
Yeah.
There was a part about this, though, that was really bugging me. That is like, okay, he is on the surface of the ship as the ship is traveling. How is he not falling off the ship at this point?
Yeah.
Well, maybe his hands are like geckos. So they have like microscopic fibers that can actually bond onto surfaces so they can hold onto almost anything.
Sure.
I mean, he is an unknown alien species, so...
It's true.
Could be.
Or he might have something with the boots.
Yeah.
Or it's just a weak plot point.
It's just a weak plot point because he needed to hold on to the outside of the ship.
The other possibility could be that he had magnetic boots on, but I don't see that either.
Yeah.
I'm going with he has the ability to grip.
Yeah.
Oh, well, I'm sure we'll find out. There was that scene where he said he wanted to come back in and they wouldn't let him in because they said you have to fix the shields.
Yeah.
And he was like, I'm not an engineer. And then Rok-Tahk asks him, well, what job do you think you have? And he's like, oh, I thought I was the captain. That was very cute.
Yes.
I'm not sure any of these people are ready to be captain.
No. But I liked his ambition.
Yeah.
He's definitely ambitious.
Yep. I like the, it's a very Star Trek thing, at least in the Star Trek movies.
Yeah.
When something big happens that you get the theme song as part of the scene. And so I did like that in this episode because they do that a couple of times.
Oh, yeah. The use of music with mixing it with the action is just perfect. It's really well done.
There's also when Dal comes back from being on the surface and he realizes that they were going to leave without him.
Yes.
And he's like, you're going to leave without me? And Zero says, your chance to survive on the surface was low and our desire to leave was high. It's like very logical. So we were just going to take off. It was a little bit of a Vulcan response, I thought.
Yeah, it almost was, wasn't it?
And it also shows you that none of them have really any kind of relationship with each other.
Right.
Yeah, well, there's no bond.
No. It's just like everyone for himself.
Yeah.
Right. No sense of team, which is the Star Trek thing.
Right.
We don't have that at all yet.
And the closest thing to that is Dal and Gwyn, where he said, join us. You can come with us.
Yeah.
But even that didn't work.
No. There is an epic ship chase as Fugitive Zero desperately tries to learn how to fly a ship while avoiding crashing into things. Dal is still on the outside of the ship, both trying to fix the shields and avoid being killed by Dreadnought, who at this point has totally turned into General Grievous. So Dreadnought jumps at Dal just as he gets the shields online, leaving Dreadnought on the outside and Dal on the inside of the shields. That was very good timing for Dal.
Yeah.
As the ship is escaping for the surface, Dreadnought transforms his arms into a massive weapon and shoots up the tunnel that they're escaping in, causing it to start crashing down on the escaping ship. There is lots of discussion about firing torpedoes or phasers, but they can't find the, quote, pew 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 button.
That's like the one thing that made me laugh in the trailer.
Yeah.
That was excellent. Yeah.
Finally, Murf oozes down the view screen onto the console and activates the phasers, which then begin destroying everything in their path. More awesome Star Trek music as the phasers just start blasting at the wreckage that's falling on them, and then they're out. The whole escape sequence with the phasers, I just loved it.
Yeah, that was very much like a Star Trek movie, that scene.
Yes.
Well, once they're out, Dale doesn't quite know where to go. Gwyn he's just pointing at random stars.
Yeah.
Gwyn figures he hadn't thought very far ahead, and Rok-Tahk says, but now he has help. And finally, the word help activates something in the computer, and Kathryn Janeway appears and says, did someone ask for help? I'm Hologram Janeway, your training advisor for exploring the greater galaxy. On behalf of Starfleet, welcome aboard. How can I be of assistance? Everyone just looks at her very confused, while James and I were going, woot, woot, woot.
Yes, did I.
And that's the best part of the whole episode.
Yes, it was.
But before we end the episode, we do go back to the mine where the diviner has come out of his vat and he's got tubes coming out of his back and he shouts, get me my ship. And that's how the episode ends.
Nicely done.
Yeah, I guess he's sick. That's what I took it as.
I would think so, yeah. That he's just trying to, I don't know, stay alive long enough to find a way to save his race, maybe?
I assumed, yeah, it was something to extend his lifespan.
Right. But very Darth Vader in his shell.
Yes. That whole end chase sequence, that was so enjoyable. I love chase sequences. You know, in Flushed Away, that's like one of my favorite movie chase sequences of all time.
Yes, it is.
But I loved when it came through the waterfall as well. Just such a great scene. And then the nebula at the end when they finally get out and you see like all those stars. Perfect. That to me was like real Star Trek.
Yeah, the last, I don't know, 10 or so minutes of it was really the Star Trek-y part.
Yeah.
Because, yeah, you had the music, you also had Janeway, but you had the Trek ship, and you had them ending with the rock monster thing saying, now we're going to work together, which is the thing that you wait for in Star Trek. But I felt really bad for the pink cat because nobody saved it and we never saw it again.
Yeah, I hope that cat's going to be okay. I worry about that now.
Yeah, I didn't like that either. But maybe if Gwyn had been there, like on her own devices, maybe she would have brought the cat. But she's very much a reluctant passenger on this starship.
Yeah.
Although she found it really cool looking out at the stars, she's very much not there by her own free will.
Well, she's tied to the captain's chair, but didn't you keep thinking the whole time, can't she use the sword on her arm to cut her way out?
One would think.
And why did they put her in the captain's chair?
Good question. Should have put her in a different chair.
Maybe they didn't even realize that it was a captain's chair.
Oh, that's entirely possible, yeah.
They might have never watched Star Trek before.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, well, that's the end of the episode. Do we want to do a quick review of the characters?
Absolutely.
So, Brian, I put the first two there for you.
Well, obviously, Dal, I assume that's supposed to be like Fresh Prince.
That was James' assessment, was he was pretty sure Dal was the Fresh Prince.
Yes.
Yeah, in some ways I can see that, except for the tail.
Right.
Basically, he appears to be like a cool Fresh Prince type, unknown species, purple with spots and has a tail. And like, I'm wondering, like, there is this kind of mystery about what species he is, but I have a feeling he knows what species he is, but maybe he doesn't. Like, he says he doesn't.
Well, he asks Zero, when he doesn't know it's Zero, what species they are,
Right.
because he thinks they must be the same species because he can understand the voice.
Right.
Yeah.
That's true.
So I don't know if he knows.
Right. That's true.
I think maybe he was kidnapped at a young age and put into the mine and doesn't know anything about really where he's from.
Picked up on Hawaii.
Exactly. You know, he could have come from Philadelphia and not known his background.
Oh, oh my gosh.
Yeah, and, basically he's this clever, funny teenage character that we all wanted to be, or all maybe thought we were, but weren't.
Yeah, we all think we're so cool, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
But in some ways, he's too cool for school.
Definitely.
And then we have Gwyn, the progeny, the straight A student, which to me, it's kind of like the bad guy in training that really wasn't a bad guy.
Yeah.
Always trying to please her father. Like, really, I can be the bad guy. I really can.
Yeah.
Trapped by duty, I guess. Also a keen Star Wars fan. Yeah, I can see that. Who dresses like a Jedi or Sith Lord. Yep.
Maybe.
But she likes cats. So that's not a bad thing either. We all like cats on this podcast.
Yes. Sometimes they actually join in.
We've had a few on camera since we started. They both walked in front of my camera.
But the sword thing is really cool.
Yeah.
I thought that was probably the coolest thing about her.
Yeah, and she had that thing too where parts of her head lit up.
Right.
Yeah.
And her father did too, and I don't quite know why. They didn't explain that, but there's still something else to this species.
Was that natural or was that biomechanical? My first thought was, is this kind of a biomechanics that have been added to her? Because she already has like the sword arm that she can turn on. Is this some kind of enhancement?
It could be.
Could be.
There's a lot of questions about her.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I do like that sort of aspect of this is someone who is trapped by duty and feeling that she has to live up to the parents' expectation.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Well, then I have the next two characters. So there was Rok-Tahk, a large red rock monster who appears to be a little girl. At least that's who's voicing this very large creature. And seems like a very innocent soul, but really large and strong and likes blob monsters, which I think means that she actually likes pets. So she seems like a pretty cool character.
I think this is the character that is going to be the heart of the group.
Yeah, I think so. And then we had Murf, the blob monster, who appears to be in charge of tactical. I don't know. Or it's just like a cat who walks on your keyboard and accidentally makes things happen. I was wondering if we were going to find out that, and maybe we will find this out, but maybe that wasn't an accident. I mean, they kind of played that it was an accident, that it fell on the phasers and managed to set the phasers up. But maybe this creature knows more about this ship than any of the rest of them.
Oh, that could be interesting.
Yeah, maybe.
Somebody on Twitter was proposing that they were actually an evolved version of one of the gel packs from Voyager.
Okay, I'm putting that one as a bit of a stretch, but...
Oh, I like that one.
It has its merit. I'll give it that.
It has its merit. Yeah. I would agree.
Also worth saying that Rok-Tahk is a Brakar. The Brakarians are actually a species from the comics and the novels.
Oh, did not know that.
This is an extended universe species that we've never seen in TV or the movies that we're finally getting introduced to Alpha Canon.
That's great.
Yeah.
I mean, there's so much IP they could introduce, given how much has been written over the years. It's great to see the stuff actually being used.
Yeah. Well, one of the consultants on the show is David Mack, and he's kind of brought in there to help make sure that they get their references correct.
Oh.
Yeah. Okay, so I move on to the last three characters. So we have Jankom Pog, an engineer and contrarian of the group, and is a Tellarite, although I still think he's possibly a troll or an orc who escaped from World of Warcraft. The character seems to very much be a contrarian and enjoy a good argument, so sounds like a member of my family.
And by that, it seems like it could also be manipulated.
Yes.
Yep.
You know, use some reverse psychology on him and...
Right.
Oh, we can't escape this? What do you mean we can't escape?
You can't fix the ship. Of course I can fix the ship.
Yeah.
I think that's actually something that kids will find quite humorous.
Yeah.
So, I actually think that's a good addition to a kid's show.
Yeah.
Right. And then there is Zero, who is a Medusan, a character who appeared in the original series. But in the original series, they were just in a box, which if you opened it, induced some kind of acid flashbacks from the look of it.
Yeah, they just had like flashing green lights and this box.
Yeah.
And there was no effect involved.
Yeah, they've fleshed out. Can you use the word fleshed out for a non-corporeal creature?
Sure.
Well, they fleshed out this creature and given it a personality, and they seem to have a sense of right and wrong. They were being used for nefarious purposes and rebelled against it.
Right. Yeah. Good point.
But at the same time, it does seem like Zero can be a little manipulative and cold-hearted. He manipulated Dal into going out and helping them to try and escape. And then when he was gone, worked on, well, if we get the ship going, we're just leaving.
But again, I think that they could use this as a Vulcan, like just making logical decisions.
Right.
There's just no emotion or low emotion, or I have my emotions controlled.
Yeah.
I'm not going to make my decisions based on emotion. So I think you could look at it that way too. It'll be interesting to see if we develop emotions in this character over time or not.
Oh, that would be good.
Yeah.
And finally, of the heroes, there is Morns. Lots of Morns.
There were several shots of The Lurians, in this episode.
Well, and there's lots of them. I mean, Morn in DS9 says about how he has, I think, 14 siblings.
Oh my gosh.
So, on to the villains. Dreadnought. Now, is he a robot or isn't he a robot? He appears to be a robot.
He looks like a robot.
Yeah.
He looked very mechanical when he was doing that weird run across the top of the ship.
Right.
With all of his legs out and his arms all out.
He definitely appears to be a robot.
Yeah.
But the question is he a robot or not? You know, who knows?
Right.
Yeah. This is why you don't give AIs free will. They just turn evil first chance they get.
Mm-hmm. In Star Trek, yes.
Yeah. Even going back to the original series, when they put the intelligent computer on an Enterprise-class ship, it starts trying to shoot everyone.
And then there's the diviner, who appears to be the second from last Vaunakat, and he's running the mining station, and he's searching for this ship called the Protostar for some unrevealed purpose. But he definitely resembled a Sith Lord or Darth Vader when he was in that containment thing.
Yeah.
But then also when he was sort of out of it with all the tubes and everything, he could have been the Emperor. I mean, there was just a lot of Star Wars callbacks with this character.
Oh, absolutely.
And then we're not sure about Gwyn, because Gwen's the daughter, but doesn't appear to be evil, but still did help them catch Dal, or tried to catch Dal in the end, even though he still did manage to get away. But it'll be interesting to see how they develop her. Like, will she be trying to get back to her father, or is she going to be a hostage? Who knows what will happen from here?
Yeah, the big question that I would have is, if she has the chance to escape, will she escape, or will she decide to stay on board?
Oh, you know there's going to be that episode.
Yeah, I would think so.
Yeah, of course.
Well, maybe that'll be sort of the whole arc.
Oh, that would be interesting.
Could be.
Well, do we know anything about this ship? So the USS Protostar.
Well, the fact that it's an NX means it's naval experimental. And the first one that we know of that had that kind of registry was the NX-01 Enterprise from Star Trek Enterprise.
Was that a series?
Then, of course, Star Trek 3, the Excelsior, which at that time was NX-2000.
Yeah.
I think that is sort of a tie to what the secret of the ship is.
It's a prototype something.
It's not just a prototype. The big thing the Excelsior was a prototype on was it was the first starship capable of transwarp.
Yeah.
I believe we see one of the panels says transwarp on it. So that's why I think he wants the ship so bad, whether it's to sell that technology or to get back to his people. Maybe they're not gone. Maybe they're in some other section of the galaxy and can only get to them by transwarp. That's what I think it is. He wants it because of transwarp.
Huh.
And the name Protostar certainly gives the impression that it's the first of something, or it's starting something.
Yes. Yeah, that's also an indication with the NX that it's usually the first of its class. So it is a Protostar class starship.
And clearly, I would say it's got to be in the future from TNG and DS9, because those displays look right out of Picard.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, what I've heard is it's closer to the time frame of Lower Decks than it is anything else. I've heard 2383, whereas Lower Decks is currently, as of the end of the season, was in 2381.
I was thinking it was more out by Picard, but I guess if they're working on these kind of displays and that sort of technology, you'd certainly see the first iterations of it fairly quickly.
Yeah. I mean, it doesn't have the hologrammy interfaces that we see in Picard. We do see some elements of holographic things.
All right. Anything else about the ship? I'm not the ship geek, so I don't know anything about the ships. I just know if I like them or not.
You know how I love the ships.
Yes, I do know how you like the ships. And I also know how Brian knows a lot about ships, because I've listened to his podcasts.
They do mention a crew complement of 20 that it would normally have. Now, I'm not really sure how they came up with that number. I'd be curious to see where it would fit if it were sized up with other starships together and where the Protostar fits into that.
Oh, yeah.
I would also think that Zero was making an assumption as to the crew's complement.
Yeah.
Or they were able to telepathically connect with the ship somehow.
Ooh, interesting.
That's possible.
With the gel packs.
A telekinetic interface to the ship. Ooh, that would be cool.
Or to the holograms. I don't know. It's possible. So let's move on to listener feedback. All of our feedback came from the Facebook group this week. And again, if you want to give feedback that way, just go to facebook.com/group/Star Trek TTM podcasts. But if you think Facebook is the root of all evil, which many of us do, you can always send us an email at StarTrekProdigy@talkthroughmedia.com. Or you can always go to talkthroughmedia.com/feedback and give feedback there as well.
So people have multiple paths to give feedback to the show.
All kinds of paths. So let's start with the first one, and I'll have Brian read it since it's from another Brian.
Well, first of all, I'm happy to hear that it's Brian from Colorado, because Brian has children, and we've heard a lot from him during the Lower Decks podcast, and for that matter, all of our podcasts, because we hear when he's critical of the shows because of their adult content.
Yeah, yep.
Brian is from Colorado, so originally from Hawaii, which is funny. You mentioned Hawaii several times.
He's really from Hawaii. He's not from one of the moons or Taiko City.
That's correct. Brian says, I give season 1, episode 1 of Lost and Found 6 out of 10 universal translators. The animation quality and musical score were second to none, and I think the title sequence, which was at the end, was absolutely stunning to behold. The animation style itself had more shading and subtlety than I expected based on the previews, giving the show a darker, more mature look that I appreciated. The plot, too, was darker than I expected, in a good way, setting up the sinister, ulterior motives of the diviner villain and his henchmen. All in all, the show was dripping with a Star Wars tone in both the visual style and the story choices. I think all three of us would agree in that.
Yeah.
Definitely Star Warsian in its feel.
Definitely.
The huge mining facility / factory with its fanciful alien and robotic workers, the robed dress style of some of the characters like Gwyn, and most of all, the multi-armed cyborg character Dreadnought look like something straight out of one of the Star Wars prequels. In fact, my son and I were calling Dreadnought General Grievous. Mm-hmm. Yeah, because he reminded us so much of that character from episode 2, and from the Diviner's mysterious holographic communication style was very much like Palpatine or Snoke in Star Wars. The battle when Dreadnought was fighting Dal on the hull of the ship was extremely Star Wars-like as well. Ultimately, the show was well executed and is a compelling story in its own right, but it has very little to do with Star Trek so far. Hence my lower rating. Looking ahead, I did love the visual design of the Protostar and can't wait to learn more about that ship, why it's buried in a planet in the Delta Quadrant, and what the hologram Janeway is doing on it. The callback to TOS with the Medusan Zero is an interesting character that I'm curious to follow as well. I'm dying to know how some Alpha Quadrant species like the Tellarite Pog and the Lurians were shown made it to the Delta Quadrant in the first place. I'll respond to one thing in your rating here, Brian. I think it's by design that it's not very Star Trek-like at this point. This show is designed for viewers that really have no Star Trek background. So it makes total sense that it's like Star Wars, because they're going to be more familiar with Star Wars. So the show is going to start out very much like a Star Wars show, and then maybe by the end of the season, it's going to be very much like a Star Trek show.
Right.
Where they will be exploring the galaxy and
working as a team.
Right. So if you're expecting the show to be very Star Trek at the start, I think you're going to be disappointed.
I agree with a lot of the stuff that Brian said here, but I think it makes sense. We're supposed to be in a different location, right? We're in the Delta Quadrant,
right,
and we're not starting out with a Starfleet crew or people who know anything about Starfleet. So it would make sense that it would be different. Maybe the way that is so much like Star Wars is a little bit jarring, but what you said makes perfect sense. It's like they're trying to sort of find a comfort zone for an audience, and then they can move it more into Star Trek. At least I hope that's what happens. And I like what Brian said here, even though you kind of complained about it being a little Star Warsy. He's like, yeah, but I'm looking forward to it becoming more like Star Trek.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Well, this feedback is sent from James and came via Facebook.
So Brian read the Brian and James is reading the James. It just dawned on me.
It's perfect. Exactly. Okay, here we go. Although Brian hit a lot of the points I had, especially with the Filoni vibe, had this been a live action, I would have been upset. But for animation, I think it worked nicely. My rating was significantly higher at 8.9 General Grievous Dead Knocks. Also, did anyone notice the huge nod to TMNT, or Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles for those not initiated? Being a huge cartoon guy, I noticed it right away. When they first saw Jankom, he's got those welding goggles on, and he looked totally like Bebop. No way that was unintentional. I never watched Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
No, I don't know anything about Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, so I had to look up Bebop, and he does look like Bebop.
Oh, funny.
I agree.
Nicely done. I guess we missed that. Back to the feedback. The only thing I didn't like about the show so far was Dal. I know it's early, and I'm sure they'll develop him, but he's also the character that bridges this show to children. So he comes off very childlike in an annoying way. The rest of the characters were great. They seemed complex, not that Dal isn't going to be, and actually more mature than the ages they portray. I can definitely forgive Dal's portrayal, though, because it's exactly what they're going for here, and it's supposed to be for kids. My 2-year-old son, Connor, watched with me, and when he was able to stay focused on the show, he definitely enjoyed it as well. He didn't have too much commentary, however, with a limited 2-year-old vocabulary and all. Well, he could have just turned on his universal translator.
I like that the guy who has a kid doesn't like the character because he's too childlike. And you, who don't have a kid, is like, ooh, I like this guy.
Well, I'm serious when I say I see this character as almost like an extension of the Fresh Prince character. And kids want to be this cool, funny one who has a quip for every situation and is also heroic and adventurous.
Right. And is not afraid.
Exactly.
Yep.
So it's very much a kid fantasy, but so much of sci-fi, the lead character or the hero character is a fantasy character that embodies all the characteristics that you want, that the viewers would want to have. Whereas the better characters do tend to be the more complex and flawed ones.
Right. Okay. All right. Well, now we'll go to Justine, who is a new member of the Facebook group.
And unfortunately, we don't have a Justine to read Justine's comment.
We don't. I do know a Justine. Maybe I should have called her.
Yeah, we could have got her on.
Well, Justine says, I loved it, and my 9 and 11-year-olds enjoyed it too. I was amazed at the animation. It's so gorgeous.
Yeah, it really is.
I don't watch Star Wars, so I didn't get that vibe from it, but the dark start at the mining colony will make a good foundation in contrast to the Federation vibes that will come later.
Yeah.
My kiddos loved the sparkly goo and the wild action sequence, but it wasn't too, double quotes, kiddie for me. Most kid shows make me want to tear my eyeballs out, so this is great. Also love the use of the Medusa in a much less stupid way than they did in TOS. Interested to see how it unfolds.
Well, I think you have a kindred spirit there, Cam.
See, she knows.
Yeah.
That episode is terrible. I agree. They used it in a much smarter way here.
It's interesting that her 2 kids enjoyed the show, and at the same time, the adult watching with them found it enjoyable as well. They've done an amazing job of managing to find that balance.
Yeah, well, I assume that's their goal. So if that's working, then good job to them.
Yeah.
I mean, we didn't have any kids in the room and we enjoyed it, right?
Right. It lived up to my expectations. In fact, actually, it probably exceeded them. I thought it would be a little bit more like season 1 of the Clone Wars, where it's a lot more simplistic.
Yeah, and I thought it would be a little bit more geared to kids.
Yeah.
And that, maybe it would be too simplistic. I guess that's a good word. But yeah, I didn't get that feeling from it.
Yeah.
All right, that's all the feedback that we got this week. So you've got all your options of how to send us feedback if you want us to consider it for next week.
So start hitting those keys, people.
Speaking of Star Trek, I just made note of a short list of things that were Star Trek-y because James and I talked about we should be evaluating the Star Trek-iness of the episode, and we've been beating on it kind of the whole way through about how it's more like Star Wars. But we knew we were in the Delta Quadrant when we saw the Kazon.
Yeah.
And that's straight out of Voyager. We heard English referred to as standard, which is something we've heard before in a couple of different shows. We had Morn, the Lurian from Deep Space Nine and also Discovery.
And Lower Decks.
The cat-like species, the Cation, we talked about that. And we heard Trek in various musical cues kind of throughout the episode, but there was just the slightest hint to Voyager when Janeway appeared.
Yes.
James and I went back and listened to it multiple times, and that actually was super cool. cool.
Absolutely.
One of the things that really struck me in Picard was when Seven of Nine appeared, and you just got that hint of the Voyager theme, and it gave me goosebumps. And it was the same here with that little hint. I'm sure there's tons more things that I missed, but these were just the things that I caught.
And we so need the Fenris Rangers show.
Nope.
We do, don't we?
I would watch that, yes.
Yeah.
All right, well, before we talk about our own ratings, I do want to talk a little bit about it as a kid's show. And so James and I have found a kid correspondent. Her name is Mahi, and I'm going to play a recording of Mahi's impression of the show.
Oh, interesting.
Hello, my name is Mahi. I am 6 years old. I am a first grader who loves reading, math, and art.
Did you watch the Star Trek Prodigy show today?
Yes, I did. I thought the show was great. The aliens worked together and escaped. They did not get trapped anywhere.
Which character did you like best in today's episode and why?
I liked Gwen most because she tried to save Del Rey's life many times.
Which scene did you like most?
I like the scene when Gwen finally sees the billions of stars.
Did you learn anything from the show?
I learned that working together makes solving hard problems easier.
Would you watch the show again next week?
I look forward to watching this next episode and see what they do and find on their adventure.
Oh, we really want to thank Mahi for that, our first kid correspondent to give us her views on the show. I really enjoyed that. And also thanks to Mahi's mom, who you can hear in that recording as the interviewer. I was really wondering if the show is going to be too dark or intense for a 6-year-old, but it sounds like so far she's into it.
Yes, thank you, Mahi, for giving a more intelligent and thoughtful feedback than most internet commentators.
So true.
But it is remarkable that this show has such a wide age range appeal. Hopefully they will be managed to maintain that for its whole run.
Yeah.
I'm surprised that Gwyn is the character she liked the most.
When we talked about this, we thought it would be Murf, but she's actually interested in the most layered of the characters. And I love that.
Yeah.
That's really a good sign. So let's go to rating. So what are your ratings? Nobody entered anything into the Google Doc, so I'll be surprised to hear ratings. James, you want to go first?
Okay, my ratings. Well, there's a cat, so that is a big plus for the show. I'm going with absolutely loved it. I really enjoyed this. I thought the animation is just great. There are parts of it that are just beautiful to look at. The show itself, I actually personally like the very heavy crossover into the Star Wars animated series look and feel. Overall, I'm giving it absolute thumbs up. And the Star Trek aspect of it, they're starting to appear, and let's see how they build. Overall, a very enjoyable watch.
Can you give it a rating out of 10?
I'm going to give it a 10 out of 10 because
Oh, nice.
Ooh, wow.
it honestly lived up to every expectation I had for the show.
Brian, James is that person who, when he goes to Dairy Queen and he gets a banana split, it's like the greatest banana split he's ever had in his whole life. So he is all in when he is in for something. So, but if he doesn't like it, it will get a negative number.
Yes.
But 10 that's okay. Great.
It hit all the marks that I like in a show.
Yeah. All right. How about you, Brian?
Well, I'm used to giving things a rating out of 10. I'm going to give it, in terms of a thumbs up, thumbs down, it's definitely a thumbs up. Looking forward to the show. Like, it was one of those things where, I wasn't sure where I was going to be on this. Like, I don't have any children, and I didn't know how much it was going to be for me. That said, it's definitely going to be a show that I'm going to watch. What I'm going to say, 9, there's coffee in that hologram. I love seeing Janeway. I think Janeway is the perfect teacher in this. She will teach the crew about how to work as a team, the values of Starfleet, the values of the Federation, and I look forward to that. And it's obviously going to be a show that fans of this show are going to be, you like this show? Well, this captain's has the show of her own
Yeah.
called Star Trek Voyager. And I love that because I think Star Trek Voyager is a great show to get started on with people that aren't versed in Star Trek. So the use of Janeway here is brilliant. I'm a little nonplussed on Dal. I don't know where to put that character. It seems to be really reactionary and doesn't think very far ahead, if at all. I don't know how that's going to play from week to week.
It's like every teenage guy.
Yeah, well, that's true. And I don't really understand that relationship he has with Gwyn.
Right.
Because it's like that they're friends, but they're not. And how could he be friends with this supposed bad guy or bad guy in training? I don't get that.
Yeah.
And not really sure about the cute little goop creature and how they're going to fit into the show, although they're definitely cute.
Well, STNG had Wesley, who fitted that role.
That's true.
As a goop creature, as a pet.
Yeah.
Aw.
Well, I'm not really sure about these elements of the show, so I'm kind of like holding this part of the rating back. But all in all, I thought that it holds a lot of promise. And I've already seen it, I think, 4 times. So that's a good sign.
Oh my gosh, Brian. We watched it twice. That was about as much as I could do.
Yeah.
All right, that's great. I hadn't really thought about what rating I would give it out of 10, but I think I'd probably give it an 8 out of 10. I agree with Brian from Colorado that I want it to have a little bit more Trek to it, but I still really liked it, and it was absolutely beautiful. And yeah, the Janeway connection definitely is what made me want to watch the show. I mean, we don't have kids either, so I don't have that link to showing it to my kids, but I want kids to watch it, and I want them to enjoy it, and I want them to get the Star Trekkiness of it.
Hey, it's great when the next generation start into something and start watching it or start being interested in it.
When you said the next generation, I was like, what? I thought you were talking about the... You totally
me too.
blew my mind by that. But yes, I agree with that. However, I have a very maybe weird thing that I'm holding on to about this show.
Yeah.
And it sort of occurred to me when we were watching the Ready Room and listening to Kate Mulgrew talk about the effect of the next generation that she could have as being a part of this show.
Yeah.
And when the creators were talking about how now she's not going to be able to actually control the ship. So she can't go and save them. She can only talk to them. And so the connection that I immediately made while I was listening to this is that's actually a little bit like my job. So it's a very leadership-y type thing to me. And, you know, if you listen to Rebinge Deep Space Nine, you will hear that I am a total geek about leadership. Some people are geeks about Star Trek and their ships. I am a total geek about leadership. This is such an opportunity for someone to just through talking move an entire generation. And, you know, that just really linked me to my job. So I'm really excited to watch where this goes. I don't know that it's going to be quite as deep as I'm hoping that it is, but I'm still excited about it. And I really liked it. And I'm glad we're podcasting about it because we'll be able to talk about it every week.
Well, the question is, will Kate Mulgrew use that power for good or evil?
I think she'll use it for good.
I think she'll use it for good.
All right. Any final thoughts before I move on?
Number 1, more cats. Number 2, more Janeway, and we'll be good.
Oh, we need more Janeway. Yeah. I mean, she was just essentially in the last scene, and that was not enough. Yeah. At least there was a bit of her in the Ready Room.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I think Janeway is going to bring in your Star Trek. So as she becomes more and more a part of the show will become more and more part Star Trek. That's what I see.
Yep, me too. Before we wrap up, I want to let everybody know that James and I can always be reached on RebingeIt@gmail.com and also on Twitter and Instagram @RebingeIt. And don't forget that you can listen to us on our Deep Space Nine podcast called Rebinge Deep Space Nine, available everywhere you get your podcasts. To contact us for this podcast, for Prodigy, and even if you want to be a part of the show, if you'd like, you can send your feedback for the podcast to Star Trek Prodigy @talkthroughmedia.com, or you can join the Facebook group, facebook.com/groups/Star Trek TTM podcasts. Don't miss the S at the end. You can also leave audio and written feedback at talkthroughmedia.com/feedback. So lots of ways to get to us if you want to be part of this podcast, or if you just want to send us a message and tell us how great we are. We always like that. And that's it. Come back next week for season 1, episode 2. And that's it for me.
And that's it from me.
And that's it for me. And thanks for letting me sit in on this inaugural episode of Star Trek Prodigy by RebingeIt. And I also want to, as the spokesman of the network, thanks for covering it as part of the network. And congrats on your first podcast covering a show that's actually airing in the same decade that you're
Yes.
in.
In the 2000s.
Yes, that makes a big change for us.
Yes. Yeah.
It really does. No, thank you, Brian. Happy to be here.
Thanks for joining us, Brian.
Oh, you're welcome.
All right. Thanks, everybody.